Table salt, sodium chloride, a tasty additive to food that many Americans are now trying to avoid. Hi, I'm George Page for Nature. Most of us eat a diet that contains too much sodium, but this is a recent development. Salt was once a rare and precious commodity. In ancient times, it was often traded ounce for gold. The fact is, there are many minerals, like sodium, that are essential to our diet, and the same is true for other animals. Many will go to great lengths to find salts that are otherwise missing from their food. For our film, we traveled to equatorial Africa to witness the extraordinary behavior of elephants that make precarious and dangerous visits to a huge cave in the forested slopes of Mount Elgon on the border of Kenya and Uganda. They've been going there for generations to eat the salts and minerals the cave provides. They go at night when the cave's interior is pitch black. So it required special lights and cameras to capture this remarkable behavior on film without disturbing the elephants in the great cave the Maasai call Kitum. "25 million years ago, a pall of smoke and ash hung in the skies over East Africa. Beneath the continent, forces of unimaginable power, generated deep in the interior of the earth, pushed up the hard crust until it cracked. From the fractures, magma poured out in rivers of molten, incandescent rock. Where the crust was weakest, volcanoes erupted and cones of lava and ash rose thousands of feet into the air. Lava spewed from the throats of volcanoes seemed to defy the laws of gravity as it was forced upwards by the tremendous pressures below. Immense quantities of ash were ejected with explosive violence. It rolled down the flanks of the volcanoes, choking the valleys and burying everything in its path. Now the violence has subsided. What began as a fracture of the Earth's crust ended with the creation of the Great Rift Valley, extending down the length of East Africa for more than 1,800 miles. In Kenya, the volcanoes are extinct, and a mantle of green softens their contours. Near the western edge of the Rift Valley, straddling the border between Kenya and Uganda, lies Mount Elgon. With a base of 62 miles across, Elgon was one of the largest volcanoes the world has ever seen. Even now, after millions of years of erosion, remnants of its crater rim still rise more than 13,000 feet. Elgon, like other Rift Valley volcanoes, produced more ash than lava. From its huge crater, 7.5 miles in diameter, it hurled millions of tons of ash and boulders onto the surrounding countryside. Where rocks once glowed red with heat, a small lake now lies in a hollow, scooped out by a glacier that crowned the summit of Elgon in the Great Ice Age. Giant groundsels grow 30 feet high here, protected against the freezing night temperatures by a thick, corky bark. Mount Elgon lies just 1 degree north of the equator, but at this altitude, the air is thin and the wind sharp. It's summer every day and winter every night. Only plants adapted to these harsh conditions can survive. Everlasting flowers, their petals bleached by the sun, grow in profusion in the shallow, stony soil. Columns of weathered rock stand like sentinels over the valleys below, where the slopes are covered with a luxuriant forest. Elgon has a high rainfall, but with so much vegetation, there's little erosion, and the streams that rush down the valleys are crystal clear. It's warm here, and in the fertile volcanic soil, trees grow to a great age and size. With massive trunks that twist 165 feet into the air, the podocarps dominate all others. They're great trees of ancient lineage that dwarf even the elephants on the forest trails below. Elephants have lived here since Elgon became extinct. Today, a legacy of the violent past still remains, hidden in the mountain itself. Where ash and volcanic debris once choked the valleys, caves now extend deep into the mountain. There are hundreds of caves on Elgon, some of vast size, and most with waterfalls cascading over the entrance. The caves of Elgon are a unique natural phenomenon, both in the way they were formed out of ancient cliffs of ash, and, more importantly, in the extraordinary part they play in the lives of the forest animals. The cliff above each cave is a rock-hard mixture of ash and stones. Beneath this crust, the softer and more soluble ash has been removed by the action of water. When the British explorer Joseph Thomson discovered these caves a century ago, many were inhabited by people of the Algonyi tribe. Some of the larger caves accommodated entire communities along with their cattle. Today, there's little evidence that they were here. This barricade of rocks and timber encloses a recess where children could take refuge from dangerous animals. In another cave, a roof blackened by smoke bears witness to many years of occupation by the Algonyi before they abandoned the caves to live in villages. All that's left is a broken stockade, once used to keep the cattle out of their living quarters. In only one cave does the old way of life still survive. Inside, an old man sits on a simple wooden bed. He was born here and has lived here all his life. He's the last of his tribe to live in a cave, and when he dies, it will be abandoned. His grandson lives in a village down the valley, but comes to help him with the cattle. For the few head of cattle the old man still owns, this is much more than a place of safety. The walls of the cave are made of compacted volcanic ash, licked smooth by generations of cattle. The ash contains minerals essential to their health. The cave is a massive natural source of mineral salts, as are all the caves of Elgon. Elsewhere, farmers have to provide rock salt to supplement the diet. It's not only cattle that need salt. All the grazing animals of the forest, the herbivores, need the correct balance of minerals, especially sodium. In the past, the Algonyi mined some of the caves to provide salt for their cattle. They dug into the rock with primitive tools, leaving columns to support the roof. But these boulders at the entrance of another cave have been sculpted not by humans, but by elephants, gouging the soda-rich rock with their tusks. Here, a wall of rock eaten away by generations of elephants leads to a cave frequented by smaller animals in their search for salt. For some of them, this cave has been a death trap, a pit into which animals have fallen to their deaths. Instead of decomposing as it would outside, a female bushbuck has been mummified by the unusual atmospheric conditions inside the cave. Beside it lies the corpse of a hyena. Attracted by the smell of death, it too fell into the pit. Predators like the hyena and this genet cat get the minerals they need from the flesh they eat. Of Elgon's many caves, by far the most extraordinary is Kitum. Immense, Kitum is the cave most favored by the elephants. It lies hidden at the head of a valley, 6,000 feet up the eastern flank of Elgon. The trail leading to it weaves along the side of a valley, past trees scarred by many generations of elephants. Near the entrance, it rises steeply, and the animals entering the cave must climb over a jumble of boulders. From the outside, the entrance gives no indication of Kitum's vast size. Originally, the mouth of the cave was a wide opening almost 150 feet across and 15 feet high. Now the entrance is blocked for almost its entire width by a mound of fallen rocks. Only at one end is there an opening large enough for elephants to walk through in single file. These boulders once formed part of the cave roof. They've been brought down by the continuous action of water over millions of years. Behind the veil of water, cavities in the rock face are being used as nest holes by black rough-winged swallows. In a nest made entirely of lichen gathered from trees, a pair of newly hatched chicks wait for insects to be brought to them. In a nearby cavity, another pair, a few days older. Their eyes are open, and blue quills are already beginning to push through their skin. Beneath the rock face where the swallows nest, Kitum opens out into a chamber almost 400 feet wide. It extends more than 500 feet into the mountains, where no light penetrates. In the early morning, water dripping from the cave roof scatters the sun's rays as it splashes into elephant footprints in the soft mud. For a few moments, images of footprints are reflected into the dark interior. Farther in, where light cannot reach, the elephants have left a permanent record. Reaching up as high as 13 feet in search of salt, they have scarred the roof with deep grooves where their tusks gouge the rock. In the high vaults of the cave, fruit bats congregate in large numbers. Normally, fruit bats roost in trees during the day, but these Roussette's bats prefer caves. They navigate in the darkness with their large eyes and tongue-clicking sonar. In a cavern leading off Kitum's main chamber, small stalactites hang from the roof. It's a constant 55 degrees here, and this is where long-fingered bats roost during the day. These small insectivores cluster on the cool rocks, allowing their body temperature to fall to conserve energy. The bats are Kitum's permanent residents. Occasionally, a bushbuck will visit the cave during the day, but it won't stay long. The cave is a dangerous place where a leopard may hide and where escape is difficult. But whatever the dangers, the bushbuck and the other herbivores must have salt. And on Mount Elgon, they find it only in the caves. Elsewhere in Africa, salt is more readily available. Across the Rift Valley from Elgon is snow-capped Mount Kenya. 10 million years ago, it too was an active volcano. But unlike Elgon, it produced more lava than ash. In a hollow on its slopes, a pool has formed where underground water is brought to the surface, carrying with it mineral salts. This creates a habitat for water birds, but it has a more important role for the forest animals as a salt lick. In the early morning, a female bushbuck emerges from the forest and nibbles at the salty ground. Nearby, a male bites the hard earth where he can smell the presence of salt. They're joined by others, accompanied by oxpeckers hunting for ticks. The bushbucks completely ignore them. This half-grown fawn seems quite oblivious to the oxpecker enthusiastically pulling out fur to line its nest. A salt lick attracts not only herbivores, but their predators as well. To the bushbuck browsing at the forest edge, the greatest threat is from the leopard. The salt lick also attracts elephants. They come singly, like this old bull, and in family groups. But first, the area must be cleared of interlopers, even doves. To an animal as large and powerful as an elephant, the doves obviously pose no threat. Yet the consternation of this young male is all too apparent. When they totally disregard his terrifying threat, he's at a loss. In the end, his mother comes to help him out of his predicament. Elephants come from all sides to meet at the salt lick. This rendezvous is an important social event in their lives, when families dispersed in the forest come together again. In a healthy herd, there are many youngsters, even a small baby, trying to stay close to its mother's heels. Elephants have a well-ordered social structure, and this is shown by the way individuals greet one another. An elephant acknowledges another's dominance by reaching out with its trunk and placing the tip in the mouth of the superior animal. For the younger ones, the greeting is much less formal. Juvenile males greet one another in typical boisterous fashion. At only 8 weeks old, this male still has a covering of baby hair. He will nurse until he's about 7 years old. His trunk is of no use to him while nursing. He must fold it back out of the way. There are individuals of all ages in a herd, from the newborn to about 70 years old. This old matriarch is past the age where she can bear offspring, but her experience is still of great value to her family. An elephant's trunk is an extraordinary organ, more versatile than the human hand in its range of functions. The trunk developed from what was originally a nose and an upper lip. Now it's an intricate mass of muscles controlled by a highly intelligent brain. Capable of the most delicate movements, it's also strong enough to uproot trees. Combined with a keen sense of smell, it enables the elephant to detect water and salt underground, or the faintest scent of danger carried on the wind. Because an elephant's lungs are bonded to its rib cage, it can exert enough suction to draw up gallons of water. Here, trunks explore the ground for traces of salt in the hard earth. Loose earth can be picked up easily, but sometimes it's necessary to use a combination of trunk and toe to break the crust. When the ground is rock hard, an elephant will use its weight of 5 or 6 tons to drive in its tusks. The young have to learn how to eat salt without getting a trunkful of dust. At this age, proficiency is not very important because he gets the minerals he needs from his mother's milk. When its tusks have grown to a useful length, a young elephant can dig up the salt for itself or for an older relative. Such cooperation is normal among elephants. When they've eaten enough salt, there's time for other interests. This bull is using his trunk to investigate the sexual state of the cow in front of him. Apparently, she's not in a condition to interest him. With a last scratch, an old bull prepares to leave the salt lick. The family groups brought together by a common need now disperse. As the last bull leaves, the giant forest hogs arrive. They too seem concerned, this time by the presence of green pigeons. These sows, with their young, occupy a well-defended territory, which includes the salt lick. They use their long, curved tusks for digging up roots, as well as for fighting. The herd is dominated by a single boar, a monster of awesome appearance. Massive, bony calluses protect his skull, and an oily secretion proclaiming his status oozes from scent glands below his eyes. These young males will not be tolerated in the herd once they've reached maturity. A wound under the right eye is the latest of many acquired in frequent fights to keep his harem. As the day wears on and the snow on Mount Kenya is tinted pink by the setting sun, a herd of buffalo arrives at the salt lick. These are Cape buffalo, as much at home on the African plains as in the forest. Though they may look as docile as cattle, they are in fact among the most feared and dangerous animals in Africa. Salt licks are a common feature of the African landscape, but nowhere in Africa is there anything to compare with the phenomenon of the Elgon caves. On Elgon, there are no salt licks. An adult elephant will consume almost 450 pounds of vegetation a day. This provides enough protein, carbohydrates, and fiber, but there will still be a deficiency of essential minerals. The knowledge of where these minerals can be found has been passed down through generations of elephants for hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of years. It's only under the cover of darkness that elephants will enter the cave. As the sun begins to set, each family group makes its way up the familiar forest trails to Kitum. There's no need for them to hurry. Their night vision is good, and they'll have no trouble finding their way to the cave in the darkness. Here on the equator, the sun sets quickly. There's only a brief period of twilight. Having rested all day in a tree, an eagle owl prepares to hunt for small animals living in the rocks around Kitum's entrance. Inside, the light is fading fast. The long-fingered bats are beginning to stir. During the day, their body temperature has fallen and their circulation slowed down. Before they're able to fly, they must exercise their muscles to generate warmth. Within minutes, thousands of bats fly into the night sky. A full moon creates patches of light in the darkness of the forest. Then, like a ghost, an elephant emerges into the moonlight. It feels its way up the steep trail with great care. The second elephant follows, feeling with its trunk every foot of the way. Soon there are others, trunks extended, testing the air. Only when satisfied that no danger threatens do they make their way up the path to the cave, carefully and in almost total silence. The tusks of this cow have been worn down to stumps by many years of tusking for salt in the cave. Her small baby, less than a year old, stumbles as it tries to keep up. The hill becomes even steeper, and the elephants have to clamber over huge boulders before they reach the cave. At the entrance, they pause in the moonlight and sample the soil on the cave's floor. Then their dark shapes move inside and are swallowed up in the blackness. Only by using a special artificial light invisible to the elephants could these scenes be filmed. They form a group before dispersing and making their way deeper into the cave. Although their eyes reflect the artificial light, the elephants are unaware that they're being observed. Unable to see in the total darkness, this elephant uses its trunk to feel and smell the way ahead. A cow and her small calf wade through a pool of water to a side cavern. Behind them, a second cow explores the wall of the cave with her trunk. The roof of the cavern is as high as an elephant can reach. She's joined by the second cow and her baby, and in the blackness, they greet one another. It's physically impossible for an elephant to lick the cave wall with its tongue. To obtain the salt, this cow is scraping the surface of the rock using one of her tusks. She collects the broken fragments with her trunk and then transfers them to her mouth. Each time an elephant gouges the rock, only a small scraping is removed. But over many years, tons of rock have been consumed. This side cavern, created originally by the action of water, has been enlarged by elephants. Elsewhere in the cave, there are other sources of salt. An elephant digs with its foot to unearth small lumps of soda-rich rock. A boulder fallen from the roof is reduced each time an elephant breaks off a piece with its tusks. Eventually, there'll be nothing left. Bushbucks also visit Kitum at night. Their eyes also reflect the light, but like the elephants, they can't see it. This genet cat is not here for salt, but for prey. It's waiting patiently for a fruit bat to fly within range of its claws. Another pair of eyes in the darkness reveals the presence of a bull buffalo. Its visit to the cave is motivated by more than a quest for salt. The boulder it's licking is directly underneath a bat colony. One component of bat droppings is a nitrogen-rich compound called urea. It helps herbivores digest poor fodder by assisting in the breakdown of cellulose. This explains why the rocks in Kitum are clean. Fruit bats roost in vast numbers in Kitum. They cling to the fossilized branches of trees buried by the ash millions of years ago and now exposed. For several hours after nightfall, a stream of bats leaves Kitum to feed in the forest. After 2 or 3 hours in the cave, the elephants begin to leave. The pathways have been learned over a lifetime of visits. With infinite care, they feel their way between the boulders toward the moonlit entrance. For an animal the size of an elephant, a slip or a fall into a crevasse could result in a serious injury or even death. Outside, a bull elephant maneuvers his great bulk with amazing agility for an animal weighing 6 tons. Those remaining in the cave are led out by the matriarch. As carefully and as quietly as they came, they disappear into the forest. With the first glimmer of dawn lightening the sky, the fruit bats return to their roosts. As the rays of the morning sun strike the cave entrance, hyraxes emerge from their holes to warm themselves. A rock hyrax looks like a small rodent. In fact, it's one of the curios of the animal world. Its closest living relative is the elephant. But about 70 million years ago, their evolutionary paths began to diverge, resulting in the very different animals we see today. The hyrax's holes are part of an extensive series of fractures that run through the walls and roof of Kitum. At times, throughout its long history, the fractures weaken the roof, and it collapses. Such an event is catastrophic. Terrified bats fly out in panic. Fearing the daylight less than the danger inside, thousands cling to the cliff face. When the dust has settled inside, the enormous extent of the rockfall is revealed. The entire roof at the back of Kitum, a span of 150 feet across and about 16 feet thick, has broken away. Thousands of tons of rock lie in a mass of shattered boulders on the cave floor. In the roof, a log of wood has been exposed after being buried by ash for millions of years. And this is a petrified tree trunk. In cavities exposed by the shattered roof, crystals that were formed in the living rock are now revealed in all their beauty. But this perfection of form and structure so long preserved will soon be destroyed. Already the fruit bats are returning to roost in the new cavities, breaking off and fouling the delicate crystals. Guided by their sonar, the bats will have no trouble in finding their way around the cave, however much it has changed. But for the elephants, the consequences of such an immense roof collapse can be terrible. Confused by the jumble of fallen boulders which have obliterated familiar pathways, this young female has stumbled into a crevasse. Hopelessly trapped, her struggles are becoming weaker, and death will come soon. In the forest, a family has lost one of its members. But whatever the dangers in the cave, the elephants must return when they need salt. Now, as they climb up to the cave, the stench of death hangs in the air at the entrance. Natural death arouses little fear, although this time they approach the cave more cautiously than ever. Inside, there are new routes to be learned, new dangers to be avoided. At the site of the roof collapse, lumps of broken rock lie in profusion on the cave floor. Now the elephants can obtain as much salt as they need merely by picking up the rocks and eating them. An elephant's tusks grow throughout its life. While there's an abundance of loose rocks to eat, there will be time for this cow's tusks to regrow. But teeth will be worn down at a faster rate. An elephant can wear out 6 sets of teeth during its lifetime, after which it will be unable to feed properly and will starve. A tremendous roar from the matriarch is the signal for the herd to leave. On the time scale by which caves are measured, Kitum is very old. There will be more rockfalls until finally the entire roof will collapse and close the entrance forever. Now, once again, the elephants of Kitum make their way between the boulders, following paths trod by their ancestors for thousands of years.
Nature is made possible by public television stations. Your gas company